Our next speaker is Robin Gaskin. She may be known to some of you, maybe not all of you. Robin runs Plant Protection Chemistry New Zealand, based in Rotorua, and she's going to give us a bit of a change of tack again on a project she's been involved with on sprayer evaluation. Robin, all yours.
Yes, back to management now, and this work's been done basically by myself, David Manctolo and Bill May. David's not here today, but Bill's in the audience, so later on when we take questions, if you have anything specific that you want to know about sprayers, he's your man and he's here. Basically the aims of the study. Yeah, there is very much of a need to move the kiwi fruit industry towards better and more efficient spraying to control PSA. We know that. In the past you haven't really had any issues. You might have thought you had, but I'm sure now you think you didn't. And your sprayers were doing an adequate sort of a job before. But there's a lot of other industries that use a lot of novel sprayers that haven't been used in kiwi fruit. There's really been no incentive for growers to put money into novel sprayers. Your sprayers were doing an okay job, your air blast sprayers. But now that the goalposts have changed, Zespri basically said, is there anything that we think can do a better job on the canopies we've got than what we've got now? And this is really driven because we know that we can't get complete coverage on your canopies with the air blast sprayers that you've got from a lot of work that we've done previously. So basically there were 3 novel sprayers that were brought in. I'm going to take you on a wee journey through looking at those. And they were basically pitted against an industry standard axial fan air blast sprayer. We used an Atom, so it was top of the range of what's available at the moment. And we undertook these tests side by side with these 4 machines on 2 orchards. One was a pruned Hayward, which had unpruned males, which were very much unpruned and out of control. The other orchard was a pruned Hort 16A orchard, which the males had been completely cut out of. So there were quite a lot of holes in the canopy, but where the canopy was even, it was very good. And we did this work in December, in between the rain. So basically, the 4 sprayers, and I'll take you through those, were the Atom that you know, a Sylvan, a Quantum Mist, and an electrostatic sprayer. I'll explain a little bit more about them as we get to look at them each individually. With the first 3 sprayers that you're seeing there, they were put on as dilute sprays and 2 times concentrate sprays. We compared both of those treatments. And the electrostatic sprayer is a very different sort of a sprayer. It puts out a very low volume of spray. It operates completely different to any of the sprayers that are currently being used. It puts out very, very fine droplets, so you're talking about 50 micron droplets, whereas your standard diameter of sprays with an air blast sprayer would be around the 200 maybe. So potentially it's prone to drift, but it's also because these droplets are very, very small, they have the potential of doing a very good job of coverage. And these droplets, these very tiny droplets, have an electrical charge on them. And because they're oppositely charged to what your leaf is, your canopy is, then they're attracted very much to that leaf surface. Which means that when you have a leaf which is flat like this, instead of a spray hitting it here and having trouble covering this surface, these little electrostatic droplets they're very, very tiny, they drift around and they will be attracted to the leaf and they will deposit on it. So they have the potential of doing a very good coverage job. Now the 2 studies, one was on Hayward, as I said before, and these were 5 metre rows. We did some estimated leaf areas by taking measurements, and basically your centre row was about 3, leaf area index of 3, and those pruned leaders were around that too. So it would have been quite an even canopy without these unpruned males on, but they had a leaf area index of about 7. Some of them were as high as 11, so they were huge. And the Hort 16A was a narrower row spacing, so it was actually an easier option for the sprayers. Very good even density, leaf area index around 3 to 4. This, most of you are pretty familiar with the axial fan air blast, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but basically you can see there was 2 rings on here. You can see that the spray, it's a front entry fan, so the air's being dragged in here, pushed out the back, and here's your nozzling here And Bill can give you more explanation on that. And the report will be up, I hope, on the Zespri website this afternoon if you want a lot more detail. Very extensive report, which Zespri's now got, so should go up. This is the Sylvan. It's a split air boom. Basically, each of these has an air flow coming out of it. You can see here side on. The nozzles are mounted either pointing forward or back. And basically, you're still talking about a blast of air, but these can be directed in all sorts of directions, set up so that, and hopefully it can do a different job. The Quantum Mist was a research sprayer. We didn't have a full one set up for kiwi fruit spraying, so here you have these round fans producing air here, and you've got nozzling all around the outside. It just had 3 fans on one side, so we could only drive half a row at a time, but basically you can manipulate these fans to whatever angle you want, so in theory should be good. Here you're looking at the electrostatic sprayer, which again, as I was saying, we were putting it out only between 120 and 240 litres in comparison to the 1,000 and 500 litres from the other 3 sprayers. And it's quite different to anything you would have seen before. In here are little charging units. Air comes out of here. The spray is actually atomised by the airflow. Here you can see it set up with all these sprayers across the row, and they can literally, they're in 2 rows and they can be angled forward and backwards. And remember, these are very, very fine droplets in comparison to what you'd normally have, and they also have a charge on them which attracts them to the canopy. So, what are the results? I'm not going to take you through all these onerously because you've got them in the report if you want to see them. But on this axis here, you're talking about leaf deposits as a dose of chemical per centimetre squared of foliage area. Along the bottom, you have all the treatments. The first 2 are always the atom dilute and then the atom concentrate. You're talking about the Sylvan dilute, the Sylvan concentrate. The Quantum Mist dilute is missing here because there was an error in application, not due to the machine, the operators. Quantum Mist concentrate, you've got the electrostatic, which was run at 5 kilometres an hour, and the electrostatic run at 4 kilometres an hour. And all these were run at basic 6 kilometres an hour. And these are just mean deposits. Now, they hide a multitude of sins, but basically it shows you that if we are looking always for deposits between 1.5 and 2.5, then most of them are doing an okay sort of a job. And this was in this really dense male canopied Hayward orchard. If we then go and look at the Hort 16, we can see that we have the atom dilute concentrate, the Sylvan dilute concentrate. These guys are virtually identical to what we saw in the earlier orchard. So it's saying that if we set our machines up well, we can do what we expect to do in bulk deposits. The electrostatic, again, this is, remember, a lot easier canopy. The electrostatic doing a better job here than what it was doing earlier. But when we went from 5 to 6 kilometres, then as we sped up, we actually got a reduction in deposits. But as I said, these sort of mean deposits hide a multitude of sins. If we actually start to drill down, and we took measurements from all sorts of different areas within this canopy, or zones within the canopy, and here we have, first off, again, on this axis, we have the amount of leaf deposits, up to 5 micrograms, and between the 1.5 and the 2.5 is where we want to be. We have always the light coloured pink zone is the dilute of the atom, then the concentrate. The dilute of the Sylvan, and then the concentrate. The dilute of the quantum, the dilute's missing, that's the concentrate. And here we have the electrostatic. Basically, down the bottom, this is the centre lower foliage in the pergola canopy, so driving in the middle of the centre, lower foliage which is exposed to the sprayer directly. You'd expect the sprayers to do as good a job as they could there. Here we have the centre uppers, all these sprayers. Here we have the female leaders, which remember were pruned, same sort of leaf area index as here, so we expect to do a good job. Here we have the male leaders at the lower exposed leaf zone, and here we have the male uppers. Now, this is where it came down to the real crux of the matter, that all the machines could basically do good jobs on easily accessed low dense canopies. None of them did good jobs in the centre upper and in those very dense male leaders. And this was obviously by far and away the worst, and this was totally unacceptable, and these were these unpruned males. So what we're saying, with the best technology and the best will in the world, those unpruned males could not be covered to any degree whatsoever with spray. And we also had some issues even in these canopies with the centre upper. And that's not because really of a failure of the sprayers. That's because conventionally our sprayers have been calibrated and set up to target the leaders because we know they're the most difficult. Now, we're going to have maybe a bit of a rethink about how the sprayers are set up, because no longer is this area unimportant. So this was the Hayward, the less dense Hort 16A, the same sort of thing except potentially a better job overall. Here you've got your centre lower canopy with all the treatments, dilute and concentrate. Here you've got your centre uppers, again falling outside this 1.5 to 2.5 band. The leaders in the lower area, there were no dense males here, so these are well-managed, well-pruned female leaders, the lower and the upper. And here we're looking at the very tops where you had a lot of new growth coming on above the leader and the centre, and we were sampling from up to about 1.5 to 2 metres to see whether the sprayers could get there. And basically what it was saying was that they can all do a job in the easy bits, and they can do an okay job. Some of them are better than others in the tougher bits, and some of them, and all of them, are no good in the dense bits. Now, we did an awful lot of monitoring with water-sensitive papers. Water-sensitive papers tell you a different thing to quantitative deposits. Quantitative deposits are far more accurate in the sense that far more replication, much more robustness around the results we've got. But what I did was I went through all the water-sensitive papers, and I went to the centre row, the lower canopy, which is the easiest place that you can impact spray on. And we pinned water-sensitive papers all the way through in all the zones. This is on the upper side of a leaf and on the underside of the same leaf. And these 4 sets of papers are representative of the centre row lower canopy, the upper and the lower leaf surface of these 4 treatments. And what you can see here with the atom at 1,000 litres is that on the lower leaf surface you're getting effectively overdosing, and on the upper leaf surface it's doing a good job. With the Sylvan, overdosing, adequate to good sort of job. The Quantum, overdosing, adequate to good sort of job. The electrostatic, 120 litres a hectare in comparison to 1,000 litres a hectare. And overall, wherever it actually managed to put spray, it deposited very evenly on the upper and the lower surface. So there is the potential for a sprayer like this to do a good job, but not in the canopies that you're living with at the moment. That's the take-home message, that the canopy is dictating a lot more of your spray coverage than what your sprayers are. So, none of the sprayers showed markedly superior performance to the others. The deposits and the deposit variability between the Sylvan and the Quantum and the Atom were all very comparable. Okay, well set up sprayers do a good job. The Atom generally tended to give the highest average deposits, which is encouraging because that's the sort of sprayer that you're all working with at the moment. But that said, the others were prototypes, and a lot more could be done to actually make them better than what they were here potentially. And the deposits from that electrostatic sprayer tended to be lower, and they showed the greatest variability because it didn't have the push power in those very dense canopies. But it distributed the sprays most evenly on both leaf surfaces. And that's not measured quantitative deposits, that's only from water-sensitive sprays, water-sensitive papers. The canopy effects, really the take-home story here is that the canopy is the primary factor affecting your deposit levels. And so your canopy management is likely to be of greater importance in PSA control than the type of sprayer that you're using, and even how it's set up. And basically, dense canopy zones are difficult or nigh impossible to treat with any sprayer. If you need total coverage to protect your vines from PSA, you're not going to do it with dense canopies. So, and potentially all these sprayers may satisfactorily perform in canopies that are managed to reduce density. And so that was the take-home message, not only from this, but from another parallel study we've been doing, which was quite extensive on a lot of orchards. Always the canopies are dictating how well you're covering your vines. And you could say, well, that's intuitive. But the things we need to know are exactly how much do we need to manage these canopies to ensure that the spray technology we've got available to us at the moment can do a complete job. And just to finish in the summary, we looked at a dilute versus concentrate through the whole here, and basically there was no differences in deposits between the dilute and the 2 times concentrate, except that higher deposits were virtually always achieved from the concentrate sprays when you had a lower density canopy. And so canopy management's obviously going to potentially allow even more concentrated sprays to be used, which are quite common in other crops but not in kiwi fruit. But it means gains in efficiency, less cost to actually do the job, and potentially raising the efficacy of your sprays as well. So what we've got to go on to in the future is we will be doing in the next month, hopefully, some managed canopy density effects on deposits so that we'll actually be able to factor these canopy densities into sprayer setups. And you know, this is actually quite an encouraging project. There is still potential for a lot of innovative spray technologies out there. If I look 20 years down the line, I can't envisage that any of you kiwi fruit growers are going to be driving around on air blast sprayers. The technology could potentially move quite fast. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Robin. You've probably upset a few spray contractors in the room. We've got one more speaker before we get to Q&A, and I've got pleasure to invite James Trevelyan up. James is going to tell us a little bit about the Trevelyan's program. As you're well aware, Zespri KVH have got their program. The Task Force Green team, who have spoken at these forums before, have also got a program, and Trevelyan's have been running some work that James is going to tell us a little bit about. So, James, all yours.
Okay, thank you, Dave. When PSA last year broke out, we built a relationship with Jenny, the Tree Lab in Rotorua. Jenny Aiken is a published scientist with many papers and a book. She established the Tree Lab business 10 years ago, and she's actually had a kiwi fruit orchard herself over in the Bay in a prior life. Okay, the research we've done, we have broken up into 2 spaces: seedling resistance and product testing. So I'm just going to work through those 2 areas. Okay, seedling resistance. We've been looking for what's known as a chance seedling, and a great example of this is the Granny Smith apple, which was found in Australia in about the 1860s. So it's just that it's a product of unintentional breeding, which probably what my mother would say when she saw me come out of her womb, probably. So what we did is we took to date we've taken 2,500 seeds, growing them up into seedlings, both Hort 16A and Hayward. Then we've developed a process for us and a system on how do we scan those seedlings to recognise or get the desired effect to find that the seedling which enables or will resist against the PSA. So the trouble with doing this is you actually don't know how many seedlings seedlings you need to test. So it could be up to 10,000. Anyway, so we've developed that system, and that's basically where our seed testing system is at. We're about to inoculate all those 2,500 seedlings, and then we'll take a minute to recess, just re-look at what the results are and how we process on with that. So now I'd like to move on to our product tests. We've been scanning and that's probably what we've been doing. We've taken a lot of different ideas from the coalface, the orchard, and we've been scanning these products and looking for products that may be, that are of interest, but if they sit in the KVH or Zespri system, we've tended to pull out and not double up and look at other products that are of interest. So firstly, what I'm going to do is just talk about how we scan those products. There's two methods. The first method is we take the PSAV infected leaves and they're placed on an agar product mix. So we mix the agar and the product together. So anything that's touching that mix is exposed to the right concentration of that product. And we have the second method is we use the PSAV is spread on top of the agar product mix in a known pattern, and then we assess that known pattern to how is that pattern has grown, and assess that from a scale of 0 to 5. Okay, so right. Okay, so there's method one. Just going over it quickly again. Product is mixed in with the agar. PSAV infected leaves are placed on the agar mix, and then we assess at 5 and 14 days, and we rank those from a scale of 0 to 5. And here's an example of how the leaf or how the leaves look in the petri dishes. Method 2, which I talked about, is the same. The product is mixed in with the agar, and the PSAV is spread on top of the agar mix in a known pattern. Then we assess that pattern in 5 to 14 days, and we rank it from 0 to 5. And there's an example of that method. Now, going back to the products we've scanned, the three that have probably caught our eye or interest that have looked promising outside the KVH results, firstly a high cane, then propolis, and another product known as plant shield. So if we start off with high cane, we did enough to find out what level of high cane you could apply to PSAV to kill it, and we've turned out the level we arrived at is 0.1%, and we stopped there. I mean, we didn't think that PSAV was high cane was a viable product due to the issues I've put down there, environmental issues. I mean, the product's actually banned in Europe. It kills grass, so hence I don't think it'll be very kind to your canopy, let alone your neighbour's budgies, and it's obviously very toxic. So then we move on to the next product, which is propolis. Now, we've tested, so on the y-axis here we've got the 0 to 5, which is our rating system for the leaves, and across the x-axis we have the concentrations. So on the left we have the control, then we have propolis at 0.05%, and then at 0.5%, which is showing great results compared to the control, and then at 2%, which is showing very good results. And that assessment is after 11 days. So if I was to summarise propolis, at 0.5%, things look pretty interesting. We feel like we need to dig deeper into that area. But there are issues with propolis. It's an expensive item to deal with or buy. So we're asking ourselves, well, what in the propolis? I mean, do we need the entire package as it were, or is there an active ingredient there that we should be trying to source out and source a synthetic answer to that propolis, to that active ingredient? So the propolis is very much work in progress, and so we're at that stage of just trying to analyse, hey, what are the synthetics that we could produce, or we could get to get that desired result without having to incur the full expense. Okay, the next product we looked at is a product known as plant shield. There's two types of plant shield here, and I'll talk to those in a minute. We've got a control, once again, 0 to 5, which is the rating of bacteria on the plates. We have the control. We have plant shield with a talcum carrier. We have plant shield with a seaweed carrier. Plant shield essentially is 3 biologicals held together with a carrier. So there's 2 different carriers here. And we've got streptomycin as a positive control. So we've got negative control and positive control. So these are looking pretty good. So we've done a lot of work in this area to understand to endeavour to understand our findings. Okay, so just, what is Plant Shield? Plant Shield is basically a collection of 3 bacteria: Pseudomonas fluorescens, Bacillus subtilis, and Bacillus pumilus, and the carrier that holds them together. Okay, so just going back over the carriers, the manufacturer started by using the brown seaweed carrier, which these 2 carriers were shown in the prior graph, but have had production issues with trying to reach the right moisture. So that for them, I believe, is work in progress. But in the meantime, they've produced another carrier, which is a pharmaceutical grade talcum carrier, which statistically there does not look. So if we get to statistically, as a conclusion for this product, there does not seem to be a great difference between these 2 carriers. Okay, so sort of summing up, what to or where to from here. KVH, I believe, will include Plant Shield, because these are all lab-based testing. So KVH will include Plant Shield in the next range of field trials. We're also growing some seedlings, some in a medium with Plant Shield and some in a medium without Plant Shield, and those seedlings are just about ready to go over to Plant and Food in Hamilton, and they'll be challenged with PSA as well. And for the Trevilian-based system, we'll carry on scanning products and looking at things with interest, and we'll follow our nose down that line. And as you can see, this propolis is work in progress, so that is just one of them. So I'd just like to acknowledge Jenny's input, Richard Udy and Phil Elson that have done many of the hard yards. So thanks a lot.
I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank all the speakers, and if you guys don't mind, let's put our hands together to thank them for giving us their information. All right, I'm going to ask them all now, all those speakers, to come back up on the stage. I'm going to try and chair a question and answer session. I'm also going to ask, I think James is keen to have Richard come up and join him. We'll also get Shane Max up here. And I'm Bill May. Robin is very keen to get you to show your face, so I think you should come up as well. So there's some seats up here, and those of you out there that have got questions you want to ask, fire your hands in the air. There are roving microphones, and we'll keep this going for a little while until it starts to peter out. Mr. West down the front, here comes the microphone. You can be first. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know who to address this to, but I'm wondering why why Bruno wasn't included in the tissue culture trials, because that's what we depend on totally as our rootstock.
And sorry, Russell, which tissue?
The assays, the tissue assays.
The budwood assay. Now there is, but those results aren't showing up there. Okay, so there is data, and in fact, I'm fairly sure if you jump on the KVH website, the most recent summary of trial data has Bruno on it. And if you can't find it or it isn't there, you let me know, and I'll make sure it is up there. But and approximately where is it? It's in the same. I'm trying to remember, but I'm pretty sure Stuart's around about the same place as Hayward. Might even be slightly lower than, absolutely better than Hayward.
It's been through a couple of times now, and one was a little bit better than Hayward, and one was sort of roughly about where Hayward is.
So hopefully everyone's hearing that. It is around about the same place as Hayward on that bioassay, which I reiterate is a piece of the puzzle. There's a question right up the back.
Oh, hi, Terry Newlands. M91 males with G3, has there been any work done on them?
Who's that? You? Right here.
Yeah, we've done a similar amount of work actually on rootstocks and on males as I've presented here on the new cultivars. But today we really were just focusing on the females. But you can, yeah. Yeah, it's also on the website. I did present some of that last time as well, just some indications of how the different males are going. So those have been looked at both from their tolerance to PSA, but also their synchronicity and a whole range of other attributes as well. So today was just focusing on the females, but we have done work on rootstocks and males as well.
Next question, down the front. Marissa, just in here.
Yeah, Bob Prowse. Question regarding the seedling trials. Have they been kept growing on to see whether what has progressed on from leaf spotting through to secondaries?
Okay, I'm going to ask Jason to come up and respond to that. Jason might tell you a little bit about what's been done in the field trials, and he could probably also tell us a little bit about what Joel's done in the lab.
I wish I could say yes to that, but unfortunately at the end of both of our trials we had issues with the irrigation, so the plants became very stressed, and so it wasn't clear what we were seeing because of that problem. But going forward we'll certainly be keeping some plants and looking at whether those primary symptoms do develop further. We have kept some plants from some initial inoculation work that we did, and it did appear from those that both Hayward and 16A that leaf spotting did indeed lead onto secondary symptoms, but we will check that going forward again.
Thanks, Jace. So unfortunately not as intended. I know the guys intentionally kept the plants to answer that very question, but when the water stops coming, the plants don't like it. Any more questions? Well, there must be more questions. There must be. Here we go. Russell wants another one. Here we go. We need to record
Bill,
you.
if the sprayers that we're using at the moment are not doing a good job of everywhere, is it simply a matter of putting on more water or going slower, so that the typical area that we're normally looking to apply just before runoff gets way past that? Is it as simple as that, or am I missing something?
Robin, Bill.
Yeah, great. We have tried higher rates of water, and you'll just get to the stage of, as you say, runoff. You're wasting an awful lot of spray to get that last little bit. You might have to go 3,000 or so plus litres per hectare. And to be honest, I still don't think, unless you went, say, at about 2 k's an hour or something like that, to try and punch the stuff up there. So, and then if you're going really slow, of course, then you're into small droplets again, which don't have, you really need a bit of punch to get them through there. So one of our next steps is really we're quite keen to try, say, more jetting type nozzles to see if they will squirt through there. But then you've got the worry of maybe damaging leaves, fruit, lower down. So no, I think it's still, to me, it's the air and fine droplets punching through, because as you can see from Robin's results there, we were doing, if not a better job, at 2 times concentrate, which by the way was 500 litres per hectare, on an average canopy as against 1,000 litres per hectare. Now the industry standard, we've tried 2,000 litres per hectare before, and really we've had no benefit. We're actually doing a pretty good job. Well, when it's a full canopy, a dense canopy, 2,000 litres per hectare is the industry standard. We are now finding that we are doing a pretty good job just about always at 1,000 litres per hectare, provided the fan is sufficient enough to drive that air out there and carry the spray out there. If you've got a small fan and if you've got a 5 metre row, you won't do it. So there's all the physics there as well, the row width and the canopy management. No matter what, the same thing when I went over to Italy there with Mike Muller and we tried a dense canopy over there, absolutely useless to try. No matter, I thought, here's a chance, and set up the sprayer what I thought was a good job with guns jetting out there to the leaders, still couldn't do it, still couldn't penetrate that dense canopy. So, no.
And can I just say that all the...
Pardon? What?
6.
Oh, 6, yeah. And the same over in Italy. They seem to travel about 6. Yeah.
All that that happens when you put on more volume is that, because of the pergola structure, is that you're massively overdosing on the areas that you can hit, and you're still not getting to the areas that you can't. And it's basically to do with canopy. There are so many leaf layers in there that you just can't do it.
Thanks, Robin. Down the back.
Yeah, Bevan Reid. Just in respect of the product testing, I was just wondering, looking at the information that you had up there, like you spray products on, and then you obviously check to see what happens in 14 days' time and so on. Has there been any further developments in respect of, like, say, Serenade Max, you look at the results and you'd basically say it's an absolute waste of time. However, you go into a month of rain, and I mean, you might put on 4 sprays inside of that month. Or you might even change, you might put on a sterilant followed by a beneficial or something like that. Is there any further product testing being done in respect of mixing and matching things like that?
Who's going to have you here? Jess? I was going to.
So just in response to that, as I pointed out, most of the treatments were applied just once, and I agree with what you're saying, that that products will need to be applied on multiple occasions to get protection through the season. So that will be part of what we look at going forward as the optimisation. So initially what we're focusing on is just finding those products that work, and then we'll look at optimising those or the use of those products.
Yeah, but just further to that, like, initially, I mean, we all used Serenade Max last year. That was, because that's what we thought was. But all I'm saying is, like, possibly a product, it might actually work really well,
yes,
but in a week's time, it may be absolutely useless after we've had a whole heap of rain.
Yeah, and that's certainly a possibility with Serenade Max in our trials. As you know, December was a very wet month, and look, in the 16A trial, Serenade Max, there was evidence that it worked for a couple of weeks after inoculation, and then it seemed to peter out. In the Hayward trial, there was a lot more rain throughout that trial. There wasn't as much evidence that it was efficacious, but I think so. From all of that, I think there's still a question mark over it, and we will be including it in future trials.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, just moving forward, I mean, if we can have, like, obviously, if you all of a sudden you can't put on 4 coppers in the space of a month or something like that with what's going to happen.
Yeah, so we need other options, and so the next field trial will look at a range of different options, mostly biological options, and Serenade Max will be part of that. As James said, plant shed will be part of that, so we're very aware of the limitations that you're facing, so we're keen to find alternative options.
I'm not pushing Serenade Max, it was just purely just a...
Yeah, it was a good example though. Yeah.
Bevan, one of the things to note here is that we've worked out what the program is. As Jay said, optimisation, understanding longevity. If you like, we've probably got a bunch of tools without operating manuals at the moment. We're still trying to work out just how to use them, when to use them, how often to use them. The program is trying to get that information for you as quickly as possible. To a certain degree, the industry is also that laboratory. There are a number of good examples out there of people who have used certain programs, and we've got to try to highlight some of those things that the industry is seeing and get that communicated across the industry. So we take the point. I know you're not having a crack, you're just saying that that's something that you guys need next.
I wish I could give you some answers tomorrow, but I just want to point out that a field trial, it takes about 5 weeks to run the trial, so and particularly with the problem we've had recently with our plants now having PSAV, there will be a gap before we're able to, or a bit of time before we're able to answer some of those questions.
Next question. Right down the back.
Question first, or comment first of all for you, David. When you have these sessions, can you update us on what's happening with Hayward in Italy, just on a regular basis, and also their other varieties that they've got over there, so that we are kept informed as to what's happening, because they are 2 or 3 years ahead of us.
We'll do that for you in just a moment once you've asked your question. I'm even going to ask Shane to tell you.
Right. Okay, the other item is for Jane. I'm assuming if she's talking about grafting in February 2012 that she's using last winter's graft wood. Stored. Okay.
Yes.
Third item is I keep hearing about Bruno seedlings, or for a large amount, but my understanding is a lot of the orchards were planted from Haywood fruit, which was just crushed up, and seedlings were grown in gardens or orchards, and then subsequently grafted with Haywood. So I'm very doubtful that most of the orchards around are actually confirmed to be Bruno, because I would have thought the Bruno kiwi fruit itself was not true to type. Maybe I'm wrong.
And I'm not the right person to have an answer, but my understanding actually is that most of the industry is on Bruno seedling. I look around the room, there'll probably be other people that are far more informed than I am to be able to comment again. Again, I don't know that we'll all know absolutely, but I'm pretty sure that, and I don't know what the percentage would be, but it'd be fairly high that the industry is on Bruno seedling rootstocks. If anybody else wants to have a crack, the microphone can be theirs. I'm not getting anybody else wanting to have a crack. Maybe we'll just have to leave that for another day and another debate.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? Yep. Shane, how about you come up and tell us a little bit about Italy?
So very briefly, it was a very, very dry season for Italy last year. So that was they harvest October, November, and so they've gone through winter. What they saw going into autumn, there was a few orchards that started showing secondary symptoms, but very, very little. Okay, that's not atypical for them. That's pretty normal. It's been a very, very dry, mild winter to date, so from PSA quite exciting. Unfortunately, they're now just experiencing, you've seen in the news, the deaths in Russia with the cold. Bologna this morning -10, so they're getting -10, -15s. We might predict that is going to potentially open up cold damaged wounds, and then it may really start to show what happens in spring again. But really from where they're at in their season, there's been very little change. In France, it's been very mild as well. We've seen a number of orchards immediately after harvest pack up quite badly, and that's actually carried on through winter. We've had probably another half a dozen that have expressed strong secondary symptoms, cankers basically, through winter. So it's very much like New Zealand. It's just so variable depending on where you are. Has that answered it okay? Sorry? Oh, sorry, yes. The French examples were gold orchards. We don't really have Haywood orchards that we're very close to in France. In Italy, very little Haywood showing secondary symptoms in autumn, a little bit. I guess we're going to see it in spring, I think, is what we'll... if it's going to be an issue, if we get a wet spring, it'll be a good test for Haywood, because I think we've had some cold damage potentially. And that's cold damage coupled with wet spring is a great recipe for PSA to get going. In Italy? Up in very little in Latina now. There's a few orchards, and a lot of those will come out this spring, we predict, or have come out since harvest. Up in the northern region, a lot of the orchards there, I shouldn't say a lot of the orchards, a lot of the orchards there in summer that cropped, we haven't seen too much progression, so we're assuming they'll be cropping again next year. So variable. France, we're offering all our offshore growers pretty much the same option here as to whether if they want to convert over to G3, they can. So we're just going through that with the growers at the moment as to whether they want to convert either pre or post PSA infection.
You might have seen Callum Kay's results where he's put them up. He's got a trial orchard with 4 different varieties, Hort 16A, Gold 3 and Gold 9, Green 14. Progression since he last presented that data, which I think was probably about September, October last year. He's had 3 more Hort 16A plants die and no others. So that's just bumped up the death rate in Hort 16A on that orchard, but no other impact. So that probably finalises the piece of information. More questions? Russell, He came with a few. We've generated a few, he's telling me.
You're stirring up the information. Several of us, I think a lot of people are trying to get 16A crops through the summer. Is anybody assessing all the different products, some of which aren't under scientific review? And maybe would you feel like it would be appropriate to invite people to say if they've got a product that's working?
Oh, I'm sure these guys would quite happily sit here and let you guys all have a chat. Why not? If we're a bit dry on the questions, if anybody out there wants to put their hand up and say about a product that they're using that they believe is working, we will also take your name and number afterwards, because we might come and have a look. So why not? Nobody's got any objections to that? Let's have a crack. Whose hand's going in there? Russell, come on, you must have something you want to start with. No? Russell's saying his one's not working. I can't see too many hands, Russell. Chris? Somebody's trying to drop you in it. Yep, Chris is going to go first.
We're using very frequent multiple applications of HP.
Hydrogen peroxide, that is?
Yeah, and you've seen the graph that's been put in the kiwi flyer that appeared just the other day, and we're encouraged that we think that we're accomplishing something. We've got some orchards which are better than others. There's 18 hectares around the house at home that we can't, other than one vine, we can't find any PSA in it. And that's an area that we will have put maybe 14, 16 applications of HP on.
Okay. There we go. We've got the first one.
We don't know.
No. But I think what Russell was asking, he's not saying have you cured it, but for those people that are trying to get their crops through, at the moment that's a target, I'm sure, Chris, that you're trying to achieve. And at the moment you think you've got a fighting chance there. Everyone, give him back the microphone.
The canopy was suitably damaged by all the coppers we used earlier on. So we're struggling with leaf and struggling with all the problems that everybody else has got with a conventional program. But I can again reiterate on those 18 canopy hectares around the house where we've been applying hydrogen peroxide most frequently, it's looking very good.
Yep. So thank you, Shane. Shane's reminding me that Innovation have a replicated field trial actually on hydrogen peroxide working with Chris. So you'll see more and more of that information as it comes out. Now, you saw some of it was, as Chris indicated, outlined in the Kiwi Flyer as an update just recently. Does anybody else think that they've got something to add to this conversation? I think all the sales of hydrogen peroxide might go up tomorrow, Chris. Have the elicitors worked, is the question. I probably should let Jace answer this. Do you want to, Jace? Come on.
So ActiGuard is the one elicitor product that we've tested a number of times, both mainly in the greenhouse, but it was included in both the 16A and Hayward field trial, and in all cases it did reduce leaf spotting significantly from the controls. So we're pretty happy that ActiGuard is having a significant impact on PSAV based on those results. It's been consistent. To date, yes, the results have all been based on one application. So that's in our replicated work, and there are a number of other field trials happening out there, so someone here may be better placed to talk about those. So Shane's just mentioned bioalexin, Citrox bioalexin. So that showed some promise initially in the greenhouse testing. So we took it a step further into the field on 16A, and initially it looked like it had an effect, but then its efficacy wore off probably a couple of weeks after it was applied. After inoculation, which was 3 weeks after it was applied. I believe it's also included in a trial which Fruit Fed are currently conducting at our field trial site, so we'll get a better feel for its efficacy from that probably at the end of this month. So there's certainly an indication that it's helping. We haven't tested it in the field on Hayward yet.
We have a number of replicated field trial sites on the focus orchards, and then some that Sonia's running with innovation. And just as an aside, what we're interested to look at is this fruit sizing, I guess, concern we had from some of the stuff we saw offshore. To date, we don't have the 2 application data, but at least after the 1 application data, we've seen nothing to suggest there's any difference in fruit size between the treated vines and the treated plots and the untreated plots. So we're just following it through. If we start to see anything concern, we'll give you a heads up. Be a bit late for ActiGuard, but we're also looking at bioalexin as well, just to see if there's any negative impacts. No. Yeah.
The answer is unfortunately no. The residue data that we have back suggests that there is not going to be an opportunity, at least this year. We're retesting through the program that Shane just mentioned. That may give us an opportunity next year, but all of the testing that we've done this year unfortunately would suggest we'll end up with a residue problem at harvest if we go any shorter. That was communicated, I think, again in the kiwi flyer recently. That's what it is and where it's at this year, I'm afraid. I think, Jace, you wanted to say something. I wondered whether, just with bioalexin, maybe this data is indicating that you've got to apply it more frequently. So there's promise, as these guys have said. Its use pattern might have to be a little bit different. It's maybe not going to last the 3 or 4 weeks that might be suggested for ActiGuard.
So just quickly, in the Fruit Fed trial, in addition to the bioalexin, there are a couple of other elicitor products which they're also looking at. So hopefully later this month we'll get a better indication of elicitors and which ones are working.
Okay. Any further questions out there? Oh, here we go. Wow, Russell.
Early in the season, when we started using coppers, a lot of people shied away from it, having seen the initial damage. There was some discussion that the copper was going to cause reduced leaf size, and that would in turn damage fruit size. Is there any evidence that that actually occurred?
I think that's what you were just saying, weren't you, Shane? That so far 1 application, no impact on fruit size? Oh, with coppers, sorry, yeah. Yeah, there is a trial in place, but I'm not sure that we've got the data available today to tell you about. As soon as we do have, either you'll see it through the summary that goes through the kiwi flyer, or we'll get it up here. It is probably important enough to have it presented here. Possibly by next month we'll be on that. Yeah. So Shane's just saying, anecdotally, fruit size tracking pretty well across the industry. Been a lot of copper used, but it is early days for that, and it's not that's anecdote. It's not science. Got one over here.
Yeah, Tom Russell.
Tom,
you've developed some some varieties that are resistant to PSA. Have you been able to isolate the properties from those plants, and perhaps introduce those properties into Hort 16A to make them resistant also?
Okay, I'm going to let Stuart Kay answer this one. Yeah, there you go.
There's a couple of ways we can come at this, and we're working on both of them. One, you can look at plants which are showing resistance and find out the genes that are involved, and then obviously look for those in other plants, other species, and other kiwi fruit, and we're doing that, and notes are obviously a marker. The other thing we're looking at is the actual bug itself, and looking at the genetics of the bug and seeing what makes it so virulent, what genes it's got that make it different from, say, the low virulence strain. And once you've identified those, you can find the complementary genes in the plants and begin to screen your population for having those. So all of those things are part of the breeding program that are going on right now. So,
I suppose the take-home message there is that's not a quick answer, but it is something that was started fairly soon after we got PSA and will help us in the future. When we talk about resistance, getting a truly resistant variety, unless we stumble across having it already in our breeding program, is going to take us some years to get to, but we're not losing sight of that being a target as the end game. Oh, Shane's going to have a question, but you're going to have to wait because I've got one up the back. Just a minute, John. I need you to talk into the microphone, mate.
Sure. Those orchards sprayed with streptomycin this season, I was told that the residue levels were still quite high. What's happening there?
Okay, I think I can answer that one. Residue level. Now let's talk about streptomycin. Orchards sprayed with streptomycin as per the allowable use program, or allowable use situation. So it was sprayed prior to 10 days prior to flowering. We have tested fruit with 1, 2 and 3 applications in that period between getting the approval to use it and that flowering period or pre-flowering period. And so far, all results, not one exception, there are no detectable residues in that fruit. In leaves, yes, we've had levels of streptomycin in leaves, but we don't export leaves, so we're thankfully. So we're monitoring fruit, and there are no issues with fruit from the testing we've done so far, and that testing continues. I think there's 200 samples being taken over this week and next week for assessment. And as you well know, through grower letters that you've got, as we get closer to harvest, we'll be doing a screen right across the industry for fruit residues, because there are anecdotes out there of people using it post-fruit set, and I don't like to scare you, but the reality is that in the trial work that we've done, where we've applied streptomycin and controlled trials to fruiting vines, the streptomycin levels are still quite high. Okay, in fruit, and therefore actually also in leaves. Shane, you can ask your question now.
It was just following on from Terry's question. Stuart answered it around the males. I just wondered if Jane or Leighton could answer from a field observation perspective. We've heard about the females. What are they observing with secondaries on PSA?
You threw them in. So we were looking at the males as we went through where we could identify them in the orchards that we've covered. Not all of the males are tagged and stuff like that. But one little bit of information, when I was talking with all the growers, out of the 31 growers that I've got information for, 21 of them had issues with Bruce male. 9 of the growers had issues, and out of those, 14 of the guys had cut all the Bruces out of their orchard. The Bruce, the CK2, or Sparkler, 9 growers out of 30 had issues, saying they'd seen secondaries and progression on their CK2s. Them 91, only 2 growers mentioned it, and they said it was like 1 cane on a plant, and that was similar to what we'd seen in our monitoring. It was, I think we saw about 4 or 5 plants that had 1 shoot that was starting to die back, so looking pretty good. No one had issues with the M33s, yeah. So it was looking pretty good.
Hope you got the answer you were after there, Shane. That was a good doctored question, so that everybody got that information, I think. If there's no more hands go racing up, I'm going to shut this down. We've got one.
Question for Jane. Do the growers know when you're going to evaluate their G3 sites, and can we be on site when you do that?
So I've covered about 40, 47, 48 of the ones I wanted to, and the next day or so I'll give the rest of the guys a call that I know of. So, because I need to talk to the manager to find out the sprays used, if you've cut anything out, and what you've done, because there's no point in me going and monitoring a block if you've been through the week before and cut out half the orchard. It's cool.
So for those of you that haven't been visited yet, Leighton's going to come and give you a call, and he's going to come and see you. Thank you all very much for coming. I'm pleased to see that we're still getting an attendance along to these things, and as long as there's people coming, we'll continue to have these about every 6 weeks now. So we look forward to seeing you about mid-March for the next one. Thank you very much.